Folks, welcome one and all to a little show we like to call A Level Deeper. I am your host, Chad Miles. Today I'm excited to share a conversation that I had with Liv Monte. Liv Monte is a yoga instructor and one of the business partners at The Space Yoga Studio in Brighton, Michigan. And before you start thinking to yourself, or you may already be thinking to yourself, Chad, haven't you interviewed everyone from The Space? Well, not everyone. There's a lot of people there. If you're thinking of conversations that I've had with people like Katie Mann or Kelly McMullen, or you've heard my wife Eileen talk about The Space, this is that same The Space that Liv Monte is involved with, among many other things that she does. And so then you might be asking yourself, why are you so enamored with this place, with The Space? And it is a community that I have witnessed over the last 7 years of really unbelievable people. The way in which they have structured a team, the way in which they have created this literal and metaphorical space for people to come show up and be themselves and dig a little bit deeper into their lives just really aligns with so much of what this show represents and the mission that I'm on. So it was really fun to chat with Liv and get to hear some more of her personal story. We talk about this pivotal moment in her life where she decided to pursue yoga teacher training. And she was seen by someone. That someone happened to be Kelly McMullen. If you haven't listened to Kelly's episode, I think you should first maybe push pause on this episode and go hear that one, because it'll give you some additional context as to who Liv is talking about, because Kelly was an instrumental role in Liv's journey. But we talk about this moment where Liv made the decision to kind of go against the grain, to pursue something that she felt like was going to be good for her and right for her, that went against some of maybe her upbringing and her parents and the people around her, and what it felt like to be seen by someone for the first time. We talked about the journey of taking a risk and taking a chance in something that she ultimately believed in and what that process has been like. And we talk about creating this place that is The Space Yoga Studio, how they have gone about intentionally creating an environment where people flock to and people seem to thrive. And we talk about a transition that The Space is going through and what that experience has been like from a leadership perspective for Liv and the other members of the leadership team. This conversation had all kinds of elements that are just right up my alley as far as talking about personal development, the interesting conversation around different sort of healing modalities, and is it something about them that is actually changing something within us, or is it just our belief that is changing something within us? That part of the conversation was really enjoyable, and I love just kind of getting behind businesses and understanding a little bit of how they go about creating things that I think are special, and that's what I think that The Space is. I think Liv Monte is someone who is special, and you're going to really enjoy this conversation that I had with Liv. So, without further ado, and I almost forgot, whether you are watching or listening to this conversation, technology, once again, not on my side for this episode of the show. My camera that I was using to talk to Liv so that she could see me, literally and figuratively, as you will see, kept cutting out and dying. So it went out many, many times throughout this episode. If you're seeing that on the video side of things, bear with me. On the audio side of things, you're going to hear some of that because I think it's important to just leave in the show. Anyway, bear with us through all of that, and thank you to Liv for being able to just roll with the punches. She did a great job. But you're going to hear some of that come up throughout the show. That's just life. That's how it goes. And that's what goes into making this show, and that's why I leave it in. Okay, here's the conversation. Oh, Eileen told me you had some food poisoning?
I did. I saw her yesterday. That's right. Yeah, I did. I don't know what it is, and I've been thinking about it a lot since I had the food poisoning, is like I get it once a year. And really since I graduated yoga teacher training, and literally yesterday I was like, is this just connected to like my sensitivity kind of thing, or just like, I just can't hold on to things that like aren't good for me, or I don't know. I was like, there's gotta be some like spiritual like significance. Like, why do I get food poisoning so often? It just seems like weird. Like I get it more than anyone I've ever met. So I had food poisoning yesterday. Well, 2 nights ago. and it was awful. And I'm like, good thing we got it out of the way for the year, right? Because like, you know, I'm not going to be waiting around wondering when it's going to happen. No.
Is it like a 24-hour thing and it just kind of moves through and then you're okay?
Yeah, I mean, I feel incredible today. I like feel like I just did a cleanse, you know, where you're just like, I'm like clear-headed. I like slept good last night. Like I'm ready to just conquer the world because I just like went through hell and back, and now I'm back and I'm good.
I mean, it is interesting though how, you know, it's like these things can happen to us, especially physical things, and I think it can be easy to sort of write them off as like, oh, that's weird, you know. It must be food poisoning, and then it starts to happen in a cycle, and then you start to notice like, you know, this is happening often, and it's interesting to hear that then your brain goes to maybe there's something that I'm moving through or processing or needing to kind of get out of my body. It's just interesting to reflect on.
Absolutely. Yeah. I always feel like that too. I'm always like, what does this mean? You know, like, what is this trying to tell me? Or like, what's the message in here? And that's just like the nature of like all the work I do in my life is like, what's the underlying thing here? Like, what is really at the root of this? Like, nothing is just accidental. Like, everything is very divine. Like, I truly believe that. So I'm always asking that question, like, you know, what does this mean in the world that like I can't see? And like, and why does it keep coming? You know, like what is like the thing I'm not understanding from this when it does come? And like, is there another layer, a level deeper that I could go, you know?
Well, so is there something that, what do you sort of make of it as this has now been a recurring thing that happens each year? Is there something that you do point to and say, you know, maybe this is what's actually going on? Maybe it's not food poisoning. It's interesting that it sounds like it started after the yoga teacher training. Was there something going through that process that, I don't know, you can reflect on and say, this might have started it in the first place?
Yeah, I mean, there's like so many different messages, I feel like, or so many different stories or like lessons in that. I feel like one of them, you know, that like Kelly McMullen brought to my awareness yesterday, she was like, it's like ever since you've been aware of like your sensitivity, like, you know, in your heart and your like feeling and like all these things that you repressed for so long, like now it's like you have no tolerance for things that aren't meant for you and you need to let them go. And I was like, oh, I never thought about it like that. And then, you know, also it's like this go around, it was very much, it came from vegetables I didn't wash. I was like, oh, I threw them in the pan. I'm like, I didn't rinse those, you know? And I was like, whatever, it's probably fine. And like, I mean, that's like a reoccurring theme in my life is like just going too fast, like speed kills. You know, I always tell myself that like speed kills. It's like you want to just be fast and efficient. And like in the process of that, like you're really, you know, you think you're being more efficient, but then you're like put out for a day from food poisoning. And you're like, it actually wasn't that efficient to just like continue on. Like you should have stepped back a few steps and like did the right thing, or, you know, not the right thing. I hate that word, but did the process accordingly, you know, so that you could have avoided 24 hours of feeling absolutely shitty. And so it's like, I think like there's just so many things. I'm like, oh, this is like always the same thing, you know, the same story and like a different perspective. And, you know, it's just always been super hard for me to like relax and rest and like take my time. So anytime I'm like down and out and I'm like, you know, struggling with this story of guilt or whatever it is of like, oh, I can't like keep up today. Like that's always an invitation for me. And like, I always get that invite because it's so out of my nature to just like want to lay low all day. You know, even yesterday, I like woke up, I got up really early, 6 a.m. after being up all night. And I was just like, I got to get to work. Like, I just got to feel like that sense of like, I did something today. And meanwhile, my husband's like, can you just let yourself rest for like a couple hours this morning? And I'm like, I'll actually go do some stuff and I'll come home and rest because I'll feel better and I'll know I'll be able to rest. So it's just this like, it's like a dance, you know, it's like a constant, that's like a really big dance for me too. It's just this like how about you just lay low for a second? Like nothing's urgent, and like you can take that hat off for a second and just like let your body heal because it's just like been through like, God, it feels like trauma, like food poisoning. It's like, oh my God, not okay. So I think this time is like the first time with food poisoning that I'm actually asking like, oh, maybe there's something here that I'm not seeing. And because I'm like, why me? Every like all day yesterday. And I'm like, oh, actually, like there's probably something here,
There's a lot I'd like to ask you about what you just shared. The first thing that I was interested in is, you talked about, it sounds like you were having made this conversation with Kelly McMullen and reflecting on it. It sounds like you were saying when you were going through the teacher training at the space, the yoga teacher training, that maybe it was the first time where you used the word tolerance, and noticing that you had maybe built up a tolerance in your life around certain things that weren't serving you. What were some of the things in your life that you were tolerating up to that point that you decided I'm no longer willing to tolerate this?
Yeah, I think, teacher training was like a really big step for me in the sense of like, it was kind of against almost what I grew up thinking was like, okay. I grew up really heavily in the church. And like, in hindsight, it's like all of that led me to where I am and what I believe now. And like, I thank it and I bless it. And like, I'm not like, screw that or whatever. Like, I'm very much like, no, like that was important. Like I did learn a lot, even though like some of it was damaging and whatever. But like, I think that like, that was one of the very biggest things was like, I don't have a tolerance to just submit to something that I don't actually fully agree with. It's just the only thing I've ever been told, So that was like a really big thing and apply to like so many areas in life. It's like, are you just going to like be who they say you're supposed to be, or are you going to like do the work to figure out who you are and what you believe in and what is your truth and how you align with that and like how you'll stand for that. And, I think like there's that, I mean, that's like so multi-layered. It's like, it's just such like a big, I feel like, if you deconstruct anything that has been the only thing, like it's just so multifaceted. There's so many layers. And like I said, it's like with religion, but it's also with just, anything you believe in too. So I think also with like changing tolerance, like so much of that was really like, I was, I grew up being very much of like a just want to make my parents proud kind of person. And they were very like questionable, like people, they were questioning what I was doing a lot with the teacher training. They're like, isn't that witchcraft? And I'd be like, probably, but I'm a witch. And then, it was just,
It might be.
yeah, I was like, I don't know, but I'm like willing to find out. And like, God bless my parents too. Like it's like, there was a very big kind of like separation in that season of life too, where I was like, I feel so called to this and I have to do it for myself. Even if someone is like saying, are you sure that's like the right thing or is it good or whatever? And so definitely like doing that kind of like, I'm stepping out from under this and I'm like, I want to figure this out myself. So it felt very like a resurrection or like a rebirth of some sort where it's like, I really had to trust like my own gut feeling that, yes, this is like what you want to do next and where you want to go next, like you won't know until you go. And so I don't even remember how I got here, what your question was, but
No, it's great. It's great. So, well, to kind of bring people forward, and then I want to go back, but that decision was, especially to do this meditation teacher training, this yoga teacher training, that decision was a pivotal one in your life. And to kind of fast forward to where you are now, I mean, that has become so much of your career, your work, a lot of what you do. It seems like it's it's unlocked a lot of the creativity and the creative ventures that are now part of your everyday. But it sounds like that wasn't part of your life maybe so much before this yoga teacher training.
Yeah. I mean, I was like working in a restaurant. I was working at the Wooden Spoon, rest in peace, Wooden Spoon, Brighton, Michigan.
It was
the
it was
best
so
restaurant
good.
ever. It was the best. There's nothing like it. Nothing will ever in Brighton be like it. It just was. And that's where I met Kelly. I was serving her. And 2 weeks later, she came back in and I was like, oh my God, I was hoping I'd see you again. Like, she was just a customer. And she was like, do you like yoga? And I was like, I don't really know. Like, I've done it on and off. At that point, I was like personal training and I was just kind of like dead in that. I was like, I don't even know what I'm doing here. I don't even love it. And then, a couple weeks later, I like went to her class and she was teaching at the yoga studio that I did my training with. And she was like, I'm co-hosting or co-leading teacher training at this yoga studio. Do you want to do it? I was like, sure. Like, I'll do anything you are telling me to do. Like, you're amazing. And so, we worked at the same studio for like 6 months. And then, I was like having all these dreams about like a woman's, center with like movement and just like creative expression and all of that. And she was like also dreaming up something really even bigger than that. She wanted to start this like big, huge, like wellness facility thing. And then one day we got lunch and I was like, oh, I have all these dreams and we're working at this deadbeat yoga studio. And she was like, me too. And I mean, that was really like, let's like do the space. I was like, I'm all in with you. You're all in. Like, let's go. So I often think back to like that season of like just like really small interactions that like led me through like to, yeah, exactly where I am now. It's like we're almost 7 years later. I mean, we are 7 years later in the planning now. And I'm always like, what? Like, that doesn't make any sense, And then even like, I was working at the restaurant and just like, I worked so little hours, made great money. Like, it wasn't like, I was not like, oh, I got to go get like a big corporate job or something. But I was like, I need to find something that like will work for me, where I have like flexible schedule, where it's creative, like there's movement involved, and like it just didn't exist. And like the longer I'm at space, I'm like, oh my God, like I was manifesting like this that whole time. I was like, it doesn't exist. Like, what is it going to be? And like, I pretty regularly have this moment where I'm just like, oh my God, like I totally like had to like leap into this great unknown when she was like, let's start a business from like ground zero. And I was like, okay, I'm going to leave everything I know, all my comfort, all my security, like this job. Like that was another layer, even with like, my closest family and friends. They were like, are you sure? Like, you're going to just like leave your job to go start this thing with this woman you just met? Like, that's so crazy. And I was like, I don't know. I just feel like this, like knowing like I need to do it. And so I'm always thinking back like, oh my gosh, what if I never just like said yes to like all those little moments? Like, I don't even know where I'd be or what I'd be doing, or like, I don't know. It seems so small in the moment, and not so much like leaving my job. That was huge. And then like teacher training too. It's like, going against like what everyone else is saying and just saying, no, I like feel like there's something there. And now I'm like, wow, like, thank God for that version of me that just felt like she needed to go and like do those things. Like, what would have happened if she was like, no, yeah, I'll play it safe and just like keep doing what I've always done and like, stay in these confines of like just what I've been told is what I'm supposed to be doing. And like, I feel like so many of us get stuck in that. It's like, it's terrifying to think that like a simple no could have like kept me in those places. And I like wouldn't have like this beautiful, like abundant situation that I have of like working a dream job and like running this like amazing business and working with someone I deeply love, like Kelly. It's like just being in partnership with her and just what a gift. It's like, God, it feels like a miracle when I like really sit and think about it. I'm like, oh, thank God that like I just stuck with my gut.
And it's just amazing to me how these simple, what seem like small, simple decisions that we make, it's always fun to be able to look back months or years or decades later and say, wow, I can really recognize how these couple little decisions made this massive impact in my life. And this theme of trusting your intuition has become one that comes up a lot on this show because it just seems to be a commonality as you talk to as I talk to people who have trusted that intuition and leaned into it and said, you know what, I'm gonna give this thing a go. And I've had conversations on the show or outside of it of people who have that itch or that feeling that they can identify. There's something within me that feels like it's calling me to more, and maybe they haven't followed it. It's incredible that you did. I want to go back to this relationship with Kelly, and in particular, I want to kind of unpack. First of all, what do you think Kelly saw in you? A waitress at a restaurant called the Wooden Spoon in Brighton, Michigan. She came back a couple weeks later and said, "Do you like yoga?" And it sounds like she saw something in you and kind of invited you into this role, or at least invited you to take a next step. So, what do you think she saw in you?
Honestly, I'll tell you, like, this is hilarious because she was having dinner the first night I met her. She was meeting a bunch of girlfriends. Okay. And I had this regular whose name I'll leave out of this in case, because he's still around here. Okay. So I had this regular that was sitting at the bar and I was serving him. And he was like, oh, my yoga teacher's over there. And he was like, I think she's so hot. And like, he was just like, and she was single at this time. And so it was just hilarious because I was like, no, like, I do not want this guy prowling on this beautiful, like, angel I just met. And so he eventually makes his way over to the table, and the girlfriends are all like, okay, we're going to leave you guys. And so her friends left her there with him. And I was like, this poor woman, like, she's just being like ambushed into this date with this guy who's like just like one of her students, like has a big crush on her. And so a couple weeks later when she came back, she was like, what's the scoop on this guy? Like, is he a good guy? And I'm like, dude, like, run. Like, he's in here with a different girl every week. Like, do not. And so I think, like, I'm always wondering, like, if she saw, like, my transparency with her in that moment. And she was just like, oh, like, I can trust you. Like, I know, like, a loyalty factor with Kelly is, like, very, very big, which I appreciate that, too, because that's very big for me, too. And I think it's, like, just a good thing to have, like, when you're running a business, too. So it's like, I think that's probably one of the first things that she really, like, she felt safe in that moment, like I was like, no, like, I think you should run to the hills and, like, get away from this man. And so, and I was like, oh my God, your arms are incredible. Like, why are you so strong? And she was like, it's all the chaturangas. Like, you should come to yoga. And I was like, okay. So maybe it was that of just a connection, like, I can see you, you can see me, and like we can vibe.
In my conversation with Katie, we talked about this idea of sometimes that's all it takes is just for someone to see you. I think of this exact moment. Uh-oh, there goes my camera.
Uh-oh.
Oh, hold on.
He gone. There you are.
Okay. I'm back. I don't know why it turned off. That's interesting. It should be plugged in and charging. Well, we'll see what happens.
It's fine.
It's this is the fun of this whole podcast thing. I mean, it really has become the fun part of it. Is a lot of times I end up just keeping these moments in because it's like, you know what, this whole podcasting thing and these conversations that we have, this is all part of it. Like when you have a conversation, things don't go perfectly. So I like keeping this stuff in. So anyway, my camera died. I'm back.
Welcome,
we'll
Chad.
see if it'll die again. Yeah. How funny is it that we were talking about seeing people and the power of being seen, and in that moment, my camera died, and all of a sudden you couldn't see me anymore. But this idea that, especially, it's interesting now hearing a couple people talk about Kelly McMullen in particular, and say that she saw me in a certain way and invited me into something, and how, I don't know, I just had this moment as you were telling that story, and I'm thinking about Katie as well, and Kelly played a similar role for my wife Eileen, and inviting her to do the yoga teacher training. And I don't know, it really struck me. I think that's such a powerful thing that I'm not sure I would say I do in my life, where, if I notice something in someone, it's not that I don't notice, but I don't think I go out of my way to let that person know, I see you in this way, and I want to invite you into something. I just think that's an incredible role that I'm hearing multiple times now that Kelly has played in people's lives. And that's pretty special.
Yeah, I mean, I always, when you make this joke that, like, she is like the ultimate seer, and I'm always like, people, like, you make people feel like you are Jesus. And so, like, we call it, like, I call her Jesus sometimes because it's just like a funny joke. Cause I'm like, it's like crazy. I'm like, she has such a capacity to just like hold space and to like really make you feel like you're like the only person in the room just by like her gaze. I'm like, she's Jesus. Like, she's like, I don't know, maybe the Antichrist. I don't know. She could be. So it's like, she just does have like, it's like a magical gift, And yeah, I don't really know anyone else that like does it the way she does it, or like has that capacity.
Yeah, I mean, so you mentioned it could be even just like a gaze. I'm curious if we tried to break down what do you think it actually is, and whether it's with Kelly or whether it's with other people, but like, what is it? What does it feel like to truly feel seen? What are some of the ingredients that to you are part of that equation?
I love that question. And it's like, with all of like the things that come with kind of like this new age culture, whether it be like energy work or just hypnosis therapy, like all these different modalities, like I'm always in this question of like, is this real? Like, is the theory behind it real, or is it just powerful and feels real because someone is holding space for you and seeing you in the exact way that you are, and they're not giving feedback necessarily, they're just holding. And so, oh, there he goes again.
There I go.
We're talking about being seen, and Chad is disappearing.
It's definitely charging now. Now we'll see. Is it charging enough, or is it just going to turn off every 5 minutes? Well, if it turns off one more time, then I'll just switch to my other webcam. And of course, that happened to come in a great moment of the conversation. So let's go back to, okay, so you were saying.
I was literally like being seen, and you were gone again. It's like every time. So
another reminder. But okay, you're talking about, as you think about some of these different modalities that exist, you're kind of finding yourself wondering, is something legitimately happening, or is it just that it's a space to have someone hold space for you and see you? So keep going with that thought.
Yeah. I just, it's like the more like modalities that I'm exposed to, I'm always asking, like, is this truth, or is this just like whatever, like I don't know. And I don't know if we will ever know if something is fully like energy is moving or what. Like, it's like, I feel like a lot of that is so based on feeling. But what I do know is that so many of the modalities I think that people like get hooked into and resonate with have to do with like just that feeling of being seen and fully held. I love cult documentaries. It's fascinating to me to like watch someone that like starts in a powerful position, gets all these people to rally, do this crazy shit that like, whatever their rituals are. And I'm always like, God, like they get so duped. But I also think that in the beginning of that, like, yes, there was probably good intention, and people probably just felt seen and accepted and loved and valid in who they were and what they were. And so it's like, it's always fascinating. And it always is like, it's just a reminder that like every person is like so on their own journey and like feeling their own feelings and experiencing their own life. And that like nobody is seeing the same thing ever. And so it's like to just be held in everything that you are or seen for everything that you are based on all your life experiences, your woundings, your patterns, your upbringing, your guardians, like all of that, like just this big melting pot for someone outside of you to just hold that. I think like it's life changing and it feels like, wow, like it's not me against the world. It's just me. I think like that is the power of any of this work is like whether it is real or not, like you get to be you and I get to be me. And like we can each just hold that, That's why I love like Enneagram. Like I've been in the Enneagram for so long. I do coaching and I mean, I haven't done it in a while because babies and all of that. But I think like that's why I resonated so strongly with that system because it says here's 9 different lenses that like everybody in the world could fit into one of them or resonate with one of them primarily, but you probably do fit into all of them too. I think that has helped me so much through the years, just be able to see people in the lens that they see the world, where it's like, yes, it's not like black and white, like, but it also kind of like gives you an idea of like someone's internal messaging that like they literally process their entire life through. So I feel like that is like one of the greatest modalities to really like feel seen through, or to see yourself even through too.
I really like this question of, do these things that we're talking about, whether it be Enneagram coaching, whether it be, I mean, you can even look at yoga, therapy, hypnotherapy, Reiki, like there's so many different things that you could look at. And it is an interesting question as far as, is something legitimately happening or is it just a belief that we have? And then my question to myself and to you would be, well, does it even matter? Does it ultimately matter if it's either of those things? Or is it really just about if we hold a belief that something is making a difference for us, if it's helping us, like the Enneagram, if it's helping us maybe just sort of understand ourselves or make a little bit of sense of ourselves and categorize ourselves in some way, if that creates a deeper understanding or makes us feel like, you know what, I feel like I've gained something from that. It's kind of like, does it even matter if it's a legitimate thing or not? It's amazing just the power of how things can make us feel. And if we believe that they work and that they help us, great.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I agree with that too. And I think that like, oh, there he goes.
There I go again. Okay. So I'm just going to keep turning it back on every time it turns off. So let's just keep, like, if you're talking, just go ahead and keep talking. And then I'll pop it back on. If I'm talking, I'll do the same. And it'll be all right. Okay.
It's the ethers. They're saying, stop talking about being seen. No.
I think we got to lean into it even more now.
I know. It's that resistance. It's asking us, do you really want to talk about this true stuff or not? No. I understand what you're saying. And I'm wondering, it's like, well, like sometimes I feel like people might use that as like an additional coping mechanism. It's like, I only see this with Enneagram, it's like they finally see themselves and they're like, well, this is how I am. This is who I am. And like, I'm just like this, so it's almost like scary. I feel like that idea or that system of like, it doesn't matter if it's true or real, if it's helping someone see themselves, but it's like, well, that's also, I feel like a tricky line. It's like you're kind of dancing on the line because like, I do think it's important to find truth. And yes, everybody's truth is different, but it's also like, well, are you just wrapping another layer around like coping mechanisms that you have and like support you in that belief system, or are you still dismantling something so that you can really get to the core of what is going on, you know?
Yeah.
And like I mean like, you know, I'm just like, you have to keep asking like why one more time, I feel like, in that process, because it's like someone quitting cigarettes and going to vapes and saying like, you know, it's fine to just do vapes, like it's helping me not smoke cigarettes. But it's like, is it really like true though? Like, is that like really the next best thing, or do we need to like see what's underneath that too? I don't know, maybe that was a really stupid analogy, but
No, it brings up an interesting point. I can see what you're saying as far as we could use some of these things to sort of just kind of categorize ourselves and just say, oh, okay, yep, that makes sense, and that's who I am, and maybe label ourselves in some way, and it's just kind of like, well, this is me. I'm this way, and just sort of accepting that, and maybe not trying to understand at a deeper level or potentially try to change or influence that. So how do you think we go about discovering what our own truth is? It sounds like maybe it starts with asking the question why and following that a few levels deeper.
yeah, I mean, that's again, I'll go back to Enneagram. It's like literally, I feel like the Enneagram is just like I always say to my clients, it's like you're just asking why one more time, because so much of what we do and like we say and the lens that we look through, it's just coping mechanisms. It's just, maybe for an example, it's like for me, my story has always been, you know, am I valuable enough? Am I worthwhile enough? And wanting that to be validated from people outside of me. And my greatest work is truly to not to like make that idea or like that thought go away, but it's to learn how to take care of that thought. You know, it's like the more I like reject this thing that is like probably might always be there because it's like just the thing that was ingrained in me when I was so young. Am I valuable? Am I worthwhile? It's like I used to just be like, yeah, you are. Yeah, like stop thinking that, you know, and trying to just like, yeah, like dismiss that. But it's like we can't just dismiss like the core of our being. We have to ask it why it is feeling like that. And so it's like less rather than being controlled by like these thoughts or these feelings or this lens, I actually get to be the caretaker of like this lens and like and ask it why, or ask it what does that part of me need like right now, and how can I, you know, give that part of me what she needs. And I mean that's like it goes so far into like, you know, inner child work and all of these things where it's like the thing that I'm experiencing today has so little to do with like how I feel today. It's like how I felt when I was like 6 years old, you know. It's like I'm not taking care of myself in this moment necessarily every day, all day. I'm like usually taking care of that version. And so I had it happen again where I don't even know how we got here or what you had asked.
That theme of leaning into and being curious about some of these more difficult emotions or thoughts or feelings that come up, and rather than trying to just tell ourselves no, just stop thinking that, stop, just ignore it, leaning into curiosity and trying to understand and say, is there something deeper here? That's been a theme that's come up a few times on the show. I'm curious about, for you, how does it feel when you make that switch and you go from stop thinking that, stop feeling that, that's not true, that's not right. You stopped yourself earlier in the conversation when you said right, and you said I hate that. There goes my camera again as I'm talking. We'll just keep going. How does that feel for you when you actually make the switch from trying to stop these things to starting to embrace them, as you said, to be the caretaker? What does that difference feel like?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, like I have had this knowing that like I don't need to just repress or, say stop or like that whole mentality. Like I've had that for years and I don't feel like I've even practiced it until the last year. Um, now it's like, I mean, 6 months ago, I went back to therapy and I think like that's literally what I went to my this new therapist for. And she was like, gosh, like you are so addicted to having problems to solve. And I was like,
Wow.
wow, that's so true. I've been addicted to solving problems my entire life. I mean, in fact, like the first couple years of space, like I'd always say my motto was no problems, just solutions. Like it was like if there wasn't a problem, I was making a problem so that it could solve something. And I mean, just having that awareness around I'm always looking for what's wrong has helped me. Like now I'm always looking for what's right, kind of in a way, but it's also like, well, what if there isn't right, wrong? What if there's just like this expansive, I don't even know what it is. Like, what if there doesn't have to be problems and what if there doesn't have to be right things and wrong things and like, just this like categorizing thing that I do in my brain like nonstop. So I've been working really hard in the last 6 months to like stop thinking about problems and start thinking about possibility. And like just that switch in mentality has like really, really changed like everything for me in the last, like I said, 6 months. Cause it's like the feeling that I get from that is just like, oh, I'm stepping back into like my power in that moment instead of being run down by like these made up thoughts or these made up problems or whatever it is.
Have you been able to identify like what part of you or why you think you've been drawn to identifying problems and like you said you were in this sort of problem solver mode. We got to find the problems, we got to solve them, we got to find the right solutions to them and rinse and repeat. I don't know, were you able to draw something as to why that was your tendency or why you felt like that's what you needed to look for in life?
Yeah, I think like it's really multi-layered and like probably like a million different things that told me along the way like that was a good job to have. um I'm like the middle child. I'm the only girl. I have three brothers. And so I have two older, one younger, middle-ish. Um but it's like there's a 5 year gap between me and the youngest, and then like a 3 to 5 year gap of like me and the olders. And so it's like, I think I kind of played like this, like good mediator. Like I was like the problem solver. I was like, okay, he's like, the baby's my baby. You're the older brothers. Like, and I'm like doing this dance of just trying to like be the one that kind of keeps the peace with everybody. And like, you know, I don't even know. I think that was like a really big part of it for me was like just being the only girl, like just trying to like make sure everyone was in line. And like, God bless my family and my brothers. I love them to death. And it's like, I see it happening now too when we get together as adults. And I'm like, okay, I'm the one that's having to like step up and like pull the ship forward with, with them. And like that's just been my role my whole life too. It's like I've done that forever, and like now that I'm seeing it happen like in real time adulthood, I'm like, oh my god, like I feel bad for myself. And like it's nice to know why that's happening or where that started, or like a big place that started. It was like, this has just been my job. It's been my job forever. So
And then we just fall into those kind of patterns, right? It's like, well, this is what I do, this is what I'm supposed to do, and then all of a sudden we find ourselves applying that to all areas of our life, which we never intended to do in the first place. But
yeah.
nonetheless, here we are. And I mean, it's just good for you for taking that time to step back and try to ask those questions and try to think about, well, why is it this way, and can it be different? I really like that mindset shift of going from a place of problems to a place of possibilities. That resonates with me a lot because I find myself also getting sort of stuck in problems that need to be solved. And I've noticed I have a difficult relationship with possibility in general because I tend to think that possibility is going to be bad. Unknown equals bad, and it might bring out more problems. And I have a difficult time recognizing that the unknown or possibility could also bring out a lot of amazing things. I think back to your decision to go with Kelly and to start the space, and I'm sure I know it's brought about many, many problems that had to be solved or addressed in some way. And yet, look at all the incredible possibility and incredible things that have come along with that decision as well. These are the types of messages that anyone who comes to the space might hear on any given day, right? Where whoever happens to be teaching the class that day, so much of the space, as people have talked about previously on the show, is built around sharing these messages and challenging people or encouraging people to peel back some of these layers and to examine themselves in the way that you're talking about as well. I'm very curious now. I've had multiple people from the space on the show. It's been really fun getting to know each of you because I'm also just endlessly fascinated and curious by this community that you all have built at the space. And like, it is a tangible thing, and it is a very special place. And my wife Eileen, whenever she invites someone new and they come experience it, they are just like, wow, that was incredible. As someone who is, a part of the business, can you talk us through like what are some of the things that from your perspective go into creating this sense of community and this sense of, I'm just going to call it magic, that people experience when they come to the space? What is behind that?
I think so many things, but it kind of goes back to what we were talking earlier, is like having space held. I think that, like, what really sets the space apart, it's like, it's not just, I'm going to read a quote in class and like, that's good. It is so much like, bring your story into class, bring like your grit, bring your grime, even, it's like, bring something that is real to you. And it's like, yeah, I think it totally goes back to what we're talking about like just all these modalities. It's like, if you can arrive and show someone part of your soul, and someone can say, oh, like, I see you and I get you and I am you in so many ways. Like, I think that is really the most magical part of everything. It's like, I love to know that like people are crying in Shavasana. I love to know people are like screaming and expressing themselves like in the release classes. I love to know that like you're getting an opportunity to just like put it out all on the table. And I think because the instructor is holding that space and offering that opportunity, like people receive that and they're like, oh, like, yeah, that would be great. I always say, there's this card game. It's not like a game, but it's like, we're not really strangers. I feel like you and Eileen have to have that game if you don't have it.
We do. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. And like in the rule book, it literally says like, there's two ways to play the game. You can play to win, or no, hold on, I'm going to butcher it. You can play safe or you can play to grow. And because it's a vulnerable game, right? It's like, it's asking you to like share your heart and like share, vulnerable things. And I'm always like thinking about that when people are coming to the space. I'm like, you can either play safe or you can play to grow. And like, that's the opportunity of the space. It's like, you can literally come here and just let it all show, let it all hang out, and be seen in that vulnerability too. Not just experience it, but you're like, oh, like I said, I am you, you are me. And like together we heal. And like, if we heal ourselves here, we can like heal the world. It's like, it starts right now.
It's so powerful, and it makes so much sense to me that so much of it is creating a space where people can just show up as themselves, their true, legitimate selves, all of the things that they're proud of, that they're not proud of, like you said, all of the the grime and the grit and all of the just all of themselves, and just be. Because how many environments do we really have in our lives where we feel like that is the case? And I think for a lot of us, that's probably not many. And so if for an hour, 90 minutes out of my day, I can go show up at this physical space and I can just be, I can be me. I can bring everything and I can just kind of let it go. It's almost like I picture everyone literally like bringing a bag in with them, and then they can go to class at the space and they can just kind of drop off that bag and they can just leave it there, and then they can walk out without it. And that is a really powerful thing that creates a really unique and special opportunity for people who decide to show up and decide to play in a way that shows that they're willing to grow.
Yeah, and I always like am so dumbfounded when people like haven't come and experience that, or I also love to see when someone does come for the first time and they're like, wow, that was unlike anything I've ever been to, and it's just like, oh, it's just such a beautiful moment to like see someone feel like some sense of freedom in community, just in a way that's like, you're just like unlocking yourself and like uncaging yourself, unbinding yourself. It's like, that's really like the work. That's what comes from doing 5 minutes of burpees and screaming and, like all of that. It's like, it's catharsis. And like, we need that more now than ever in our culture. Like we are so like trapped. And I also think like just, so connected to so many things too. It's like we have so much resource and like connection to just everything happening in the world. And it's like, you just are gathering all of that and holding it. And it's like, we aren't meant to like gather and just like not let that go. And like, if you don't have a modality that like helps you just completely release all of that, like, like, what are you doing? Are you okay? Like, it's so important.
Do you think it can be could people be sort of scared or intimidated by the environment that the space creates as well? Because it can be hard and challenging to show up as our true selves and to peel back some of these layers and take a look at what we might find. Do you think that gets in the way sometimes of people being willing to show up?
Yeah, absolutely. I can't tell you like how many times I've heard, oh, I don't want to cry, or, like things like that, where it's like, oh, it's like, it is like, it's going to make me feel something, like, and it's like, I get it. Like, and it's, I think not hard, but like, I think I'm so far on the other side of that I'm like, I used to be like that too. I used to just shove it down, like, no problems, just solutions, like just very like, let's just like pick her up and go. And like, I'm very much now just like, no, like you have to feel the feelings, like whatever you're not feeling and like expressing, it's like, it's just like getting stuck somewhere in your body. And like, it's such an opportunity and it's such a gift to be able to have some kind of modality that can pull us out of that and like pull it out of us. In my mind, I'm like, oh, you're missing out if like you don't do it. And I get it's scary, but like growth is scary. Like if you want to change, you're going to be scared. Like you have to rub up against something, And I think like, I've had my own journey with that the last, 7 years. It's like to know what I'm thinking and feeling and like to express that and to move through it physically, like that is the greatest gift I can give myself. And if someone is not going to like rise up to that invitation, like I am so sad for them. And like, it's going to take some like gumption. It's going to take some like, okay, yes, I do want that. So like when I hear that people like, I hear it a lot, honestly, that like, oh, I'm scared to try that, or I'm going to feel whatever. And I'm just like, oh, you're going to miss out. Like if you don't do it. And it's like, you can't change people. Like you can only influence them. It's like, goes back to that for me too. It's like, I think that I spent a lot of time in the church trying to convince people to believe what I believed in, that like I'm so beyond that now that I'm like, oh, like I am so sad if you miss this opportunity. And like, I respect your decision too. It's like, I used to just like grieve when I would like go and like share the gospel with somebody. Like, oh, I just don't know if they're going to get it, and just trying so hard to get them to get it and get them to want it, that like now I'm just like, I'm sad if you don't let yourself do this, and like, you're up to you. Like, that's as much as I can do for you, you know?
Goes back to the word space. All you can do is to create a space and invite people into it and say, you know what, this is going to be here for you when you're ready. It's going to be here. And ultimately, yeah, I've learned that in my own story as well, that we can't necessarily force people into things that we might believe in. And, you know, I don't think we ultimately want to, because people have to be open and willing to receive something like that in the first place. And so I just think about that idea that just create a space and it's going to be there. The space is going through a transition and entering into more unknown and more, you know, it's just something different. Can you share a little bit about what this experience has been like as far as entering into a new chapter?
Yeah, I think like, you know, this was always something that was like on our horizon, but also like it was also like a huge undertaking when we would think about all the details and all like the moving pieces of everything. And for lack of better words, it's like we've kind of been forced into this transition. And like in the beginning, you know, what, 3-4 months ago when it all kind of started, it was very much like we were digging our heels in. We were like, fuck, you know, like this is just like a lot. And we feel like we don't have a choice, and like screw those guys, and, you know, like all the moving pieces of like kind of the upheaval. And, you know, it's happening. It's like, it's happening now. And like, there's like, work is being done every single day. Like this new building is going to be beautiful and big and just like exactly what we need to have like going forward as like our next step for sure. And so I feel like as overwhelming and as chaotic and as like, you know, just as it has felt and been, it's also like, you know, very much in this space of like, thank you to the people that caused us to uproot, because it's like we would have waited so much longer than we should have to make this move. And, you know, there's this like beautiful song. I can never pronounce his name, but I'm not even going to try, but it's like a piano song, and it's about this woman talking in it. And she says, birth is so chaotic that you think like it's the end, but it's really the beginning. And I just feel like that's been this season for us truly, because it's like, you know, there's like this turbulence, and there's this like also this knowing that like, oh, in like a month or two, like we will look back at this and be like, wow, you know, like look at what we just like navigated through, and look where we are now. Look at this beautiful building. Look at all these people that can fit in here, and just so many things. It's like we're ready for this. And it's also just been chaos, but it's like, no, we're ready, you know. It's like double whammy. And I know we'll look back and we'll be like, wow, like thank God that happened when it happened. Like I'm already feeling a sense of that, you know.
Yeah. Well, and so just for context for people listening who might not know, the Space Studio in Brighton is physically moving to a new location. And So that's this process that Liv is talking about. And yeah, it's just interesting how sometimes we're forced into uncomfortability, we're forced into growth in ways that at the time we might not want. I had this recently professionally with losing some work from a very long time client that like was a big part of my income, big part of my business. And at the moment it was just like this oh shit moment of I don't know what I'm going to do. I was panicking. I'm not ready for this. This isn't what I want or what I need. And it's led to some incredible opportunities now that have come even in the last couple of months for me. And I think of that same thing for you all. And I love that you have that perspective that this can be that, that birthing process of something new and something that maybe is even more special. And that's a cool perspective to have, despite I imagine lots of difficulties and challenges and frustrations that have come in the recent months.
Yeah. I always it's like a common theme in a lot of the things we've talked about today with like teacher training and all of that is like deconstruction is like essential to construction. It's like we have to dismantle, we have to like break up what is there if we want something new to like come forth, or if we want more like in life in general.
And how cool that we talk about creating this space and this environment, and how cool that it doesn't have to be tied to a physical space. I think that's what's so cool about what the space represents, is that you are creating this more metaphorical space that people can come into. And that can transcend into any four walls. And it can also, I've seen it with my wife, Eileen, it can go from out to Alaska and to California, and as she's doing virtual classes online, those feelings and the space that is created, that you all create, it can kind of transcend into any type of location. And I think that's what's most unique and special about it in the first place.
Yeah, I love Eileen. She's like our virtual, what is it? Like ambassador. Like she's just like always sharing it. She's always doing it. Like I love her so much.
It's been fun to see her in many states, many locations, many places,
yeah.
Just jumping up and down and yelling and still embodying so many of the things that are part of the practice. So yeah, it's been cool for me to see as well. Well, I appreciate you sharing today, Liv. I'm excited to see the next chapter of what this holds for you, for all of you at the space, because I think that there are many, many incredible things ahead. So, we are all rooting for you, and I know you've got an incredible community that I trust will help support you through this process. Thank you and there goes my camera again. I mean, God bless you. So just in case you're listening to this, my camera has been going out like every 90 seconds for the last half an hour, and Liv has just been fighting through it. So we've been battling the technology on this episode, but thank you for bearing with me through all of that, and thanks for being here to share your story. I really appreciate it. I'm glad that we could connect.
Yeah, same. Thank you for having me. And I'm just, always rooting for the Miles family. So
thank you. The feeling's
and
mutual.
We better see you in a class. Better see you in a class soon.
Okay. All right. Okay.
You better come to a class. See if it'll do it.
All right. Oh yeah. The thumbs up. It's not doing it.
It's not doing it.
If people wanted to find you, connect with you, and learn more about the space, where can they do that?
Yeah, I follow me on Instagram. My handle is @LivyMonte. And then I also have like a little baby called Verbinding House. And that's like where I have my art. I have Enneagram stuff, interior. It's kind of just a creative hub. So verbindinghouse.com. And then also at the space, you can find us at discoverthespace.com or The Space Brighton on Instagram.
Awesome. Liv, thanks for being here. Appreciate you.
Thanks, Chad.
Folks, thank you for tuning in to these conversations. It really means a lot to me. I put them out because it energizes me, because I enjoy it. It helps me just operate on kind of a higher level and higher frequency. I have a lot of fun doing it, and I hope that you enjoy listening to people's stories and the things that make their lives unique and interesting. And I think we just always have something to learn from people's stories. In the show description of this show, down below, or if you're listening, in the show description on whatever platform you're listening on, is a link to a platform called Buy Me a Coffee. It's just as it sounds. It's a place where you can support the show monetarily and buy me a coffee to support some of the late night editing sessions and recording sessions that go into creating this show. I would greatly appreciate it. Those donations help me cover the cost of the show and keep it running. All right, until next week, I will see you again on Tuesday. Be well.